This video is the Ultimatum episode, whatever it is, right? Uh, so personally, I've really tried to hold off on this particular topic. I really wanted to have something to say that's different than what everyone else is saying, not just like spitting out, the exact same stuff everybody else is talking about without adding to the conversation. And, I figured my channel was already small enough that I don't really, I can't really say the exact same thing everyone else is saying, So what I want to add is my point of view that I haven't heard yet, right? Not that no one's saying it, but I haven't heard it yet, right? Of giving South Africa an ultimatum, right? This is also technically giving Africa an ultimatum, right? This is for all of Africa, this is for the Caribbean, this is for the diaspora, but mostly Africa, because that's where the base is at, right? That's where all of our power from the diaspora, Caribbean, wherever we're at in the world, the base is in Africa, right? So Chinese still know the power comes from China. Like when they're in America, whether in Africa, in Caribbean, whether in Europe, right? They know where their base is at, right? And Africa, we should know our base is in Africa, right? No matter what ethnic group we come from, no matter what the history is, it's a critical moment where we should all learn to be able to get along with each other as Africans, right? And yeah, the ultimatum, right? So it's in my opinion that South Africa, in specific for right now, needs to be given an ultimatum on addressing their colonial issue. I'm calling it, right? The colonial issue of particular people that are in the land right now that have had a history of abuse and terrorism, right? And oppressing the indigenous population, and how they plan to address that, right? And they like to say that, it's our problem, we're going to deal with it type stuff. But technically, these are things that are affecting the whole continent, right? And if one country is as colonized as South Africa is, with the issue of it really being that is a significant population of colonizers on the land, right? It's not even that, the same issue technically goes almost everywhere in Africa, that there's an outside population or a minority that has a very large stake in the economy. If you go to Kenya, the Indians, along with the whites and colonizers, former colonizers, right, they still have a lot of control of the economy, right? I hate to have to build a base this long. It's already been 5 minutes, right? However many minutes, right? But they're not, that significant of a population, right? So at some point, if we all, work to collectively build ourselves as Africans and not let petty things like historical beefs, which are, relevant, they have their place, but we should find a way to work through it. And it's kind of ironic to me that a lot of our countries, like, Nigeria right now, like, is being held back mostly from folks that are like haven't found a way to work past ethnic and religious tensions, right? And that's really the only thing that they'd already, if they work past that, they would already be in a paradise, almost a paradise, And big manism wouldn't even be a real problem of having odogus and all the big guys rolling around in the Benz and all the fancy cars, and because the economy would be doing well enough that the average person doesn't feel like they're suffering, And in fact, we'd even have it. It'd be good enough that even the bottom is not so much of a bottom. Everybody would be doing decently well to eat and have adequate clothes, shelter, take care of the children, all that. With just basic decent governance, right? You don't have to have like really great governance for a country as rich as Nigeria with oil, right? Among other things, to have a decent country with a decent living for every individual, right? But we have these beefs, right? And the beef is among skin folk, people that are they're the same, looking the same, right? We have this tension amongst ourselves that won't allow us to build anything, right? And in South Africa, they still want to try to build with folks who don't want to build with them at all, right? And it's not a matter of religion, because they're all the same religion practically. Everybody almost in South Africa is almost all Christian, right? It's a huge Christian population. It's not a matter of religious tension in the country, right? But there is a historical, ethnic, and racist tension, and they don't want to actually address the racist tension that everyone keeps putting out there. And they're becoming a threat to the rest of Africa, honestly. If I'm being honest, 8 minutes in, they're becoming a threat to the rest of Africa. And Africa, we have a timeline that we need to keep. We need urgency in the things that we're doing. Integrating in Africa should be our biggest thing. But to do that, we need to have trust amongst each other. We need to be able to build the bridges between each other, and stop having these select people, these individuals within religious and political organizations, whether they're churches and imams or the local chiefs and kings and priests, right? These people who are paid and profiting off a system that exploits the general population, right? If they're not behind, Africa doing for itself, right? If that's not the stuff that they're preaching and showing you, right? They need to go, right? They can't be in the way of us getting what we need, right? And South Africa is no different. Having that many white people on the continent with power, right, is a big threat to the rest of Africa. And to be honest, if they're not going to deal with it at some point, the rest of the continent, while we're integrating and building and getting rid of these shitty leaders, right, we're going to have to deal with it, right? So if they don't deal with it, we have to deal with it. And for the South African folks that might watch this, right, we helped you deal with it to get rid of apartheid, right? It's been taken for granted. They don't really seem to appreciate the things other people have put in, and you'd rather live with the folks who are actively oppressing you and controlling everything than to work with the folks who you have something in common with, who are being oppressed by the same people. And that is kind of offensive to the rest of Africa, right? And you need to address that as soon as possible. Like, that's your number one issue. It's not your economy, it's not anything else, but how to deal with these folks, right? Y'all need to address that. And you can brush it off and say that it's something that's an internal issue, but it's really not. It's an internal Africa issue, and all of Africa is either suffering from it or will suffer from it, or they'll benefit from whatever your choices will be, right? And if you decide to work with the rest of Africa, you should know that the rest of Africa will not approve of a rainbow nation, right? The rest of Africa will not approve with a rainbow nation, right? I know for a fact, me as a diasporan, right, if I'm going to come back, I'm not coming back to a rainbow nation, right? I don't want to see these people, after we integrate, right, and we have a one passport and you can travel around all of Africa without visa and all that. I don't want to see these racist white people in South Africa, right? I don't want to see those Boers who would, shoot one of my mother or my aunt and feed them to pigs, right? I wouldn't want to see those folks just traveling around Africa freely, right? They should feel as uncomfortable as possible in Africa, honestly, in my opinion, right? To the point where they should want to flee, right? And the only way that they wouldn't want to flee is if they know that they're not racist and that they don't have racist tendencies, or if they do have racist tendencies, that they're working to get rid of them, right? Those are the only folks that we can actually even think to allow in our spaces without feeling threatened, right? And even those folks should be on their toes, right? That, it's not, I'm saying, if I'm saying if it's not dealt with, honestly, by local South Africans, at some point it'll get dealt with by the rest of Africa, who are the majority of Africa. And at some point it could become physical, where we actually decide to go into Africa as Africans, that have already integrated and found our way, that it's working, we're building something, and we know we're trying to get to a place where we're unstoppable, and we're not going to let one country who believes that they have something in common with their enemy, that is an enemy that has shown that they don't want to have anything in common with you. They don't even believe you're human, right? Like, that population, you cannot be coexistence with, right? And you really can't build anything with them, right? And yeah, I had a whole bunch of notes. This might have to be another part.